I love that. I've had you on for a long time, so I'm just gonna wrap it up with one more question.
Mhm.
Why should Marxists today read Hegel? And is there an
Hmm.
importance to read Hegel? Because I often will tell people, don't read Hegel. Like it's okay. Like read like new Marxists, like new organizers, new activists. And they're gung ho about like reading all of the original theory. I usually tell them to skip Hegel. Like it's even skip Capital sometimes. I'm like, that's those really dense material. Go to lighter projects, lighter works. But it's clear that Hegel is this foundational element within Marxism. So clearly there is some level of importance to read him even today. But why should Marxists read him today?
Yeah. So, there's like the Lenin quote where Lenin says that nobody can fully understand Marx's Capital unless they've mastered Hegel's Science of Logic. Well, if we're waiting on every comrade to fully master Capital, we're not going to get anywhere. So, right? Not everybody has to read Hegel. That's what I always say, right? And I actually think like, you can skip Hegel and go to Capital. I actually found that, I had studied Hegel in undergrad, but then I did an intense study of Capital and then went back to Hegel. Hegel made more sense to me after that because Marx teaches you dialectics with something that's easier to like grab onto. I don't think every Marxist needs to understand Hegel, especially Hegel's Science of Logic. It's very specialized work. That's where I come in. I think that people who are theory focused, people who, especially within philosophy, who are working, what Althusser would call like a class war of ideas within philosophy, that Hegel is beneficial. Hegel is something that I think people who are theory focused can invest time into and get a lot out of. And learning to think through problems in a Hegelian manner is also something that's incredibly helpful to avoid one-sidedness. Now, the essay Who Thinks Abstractly by Hegel, which is on Marxist.org and is like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 pages, something like that. That's a good place to start to just get a little bit of Hegel to use. But I think at the end of the day, while I think it's worth to put time into Hegel if you're a philosophy student and a Marxist philosopher, we can't all be doing it. And so, I think that you can put your time into other things that are going to have quicker use value.
Is there?
But
Oh,
yeah.
sorry. No,
Yeah,
keep going.
you also have to work through a lot of philosophy to get up to Hegel. But if you want to do that, a philosophy education is something wonderful. And I think everybody would benefit from having an education in philosophy, going through, all the great classic texts and not depriving oneself of that. But, spending the 2-3 years, whatever it takes to master the science of logic, which 2 or 3 years after you already have a decent education in philosophy, is not something that we can all afford to do right now. So, yeah.
Do you recommend reading Lacerdo's book on Hegel before jumping into Hegel?
Lacerda's book on Hegel is something that focuses more on Hegel's philosophy of right, which is his political philosophy. And so I think like I'm somebody who always likes to read original text before I read stuff on it. So it could be interesting to like look at, say, like, the introduction or whatnot, but it's really a book that's embedded within like different debates about the role of Hegel and whether Hegel was a liberal to the end, which is what Lacerda wants to say. But a book that's actually quite good for an overview of Hegel is surprisingly from somebody that Lacerda is quite critical of. Herbert Marcuse has a book called Reason and Revolution, and it's like I was amazed. Like there's so many commentaries on Hegel out there, but this one is just so clear and accessible, and it's written in like the 1950s.